Hi, welcome to this tutorial on real-time virtual lab. This tutorial is all about a real-time system, and that system is a virtual. Virtual means not physical. It is not in front of you. It is the system is at some remote place. However, that system you are monitoring and controlling remotely by using or by through internet. Though the concept is not new, it is existing for a couple of years, specifically in multinational companies where their research center or monitoring center are at some place and their industries are spread across the globe. So they are monitoring their factories, this process control systems remotely by using this what is called virtual. You will find good number of references on this following link, that is virtual labs at IIT Bombay, which is a MHRD project couple of years back where some of the IITs have contributed in developing these instruments where students can access these instruments remotely by using this concept of virtual lab. The educational objectives majorly a equipment which is very expensive, which is not affordable, that equipment where other institutes also should be able to share that experimental setup. So for example, a expensive spectrum analyzer, power analyzers, or some laboratory equipment which are not physically possible or not affordable, those systems, how to provide the access to the other students or the organizations. So that is the major objective at, in educational sector, the purpose of developing this virtual lab concept. So without using commercial tools, with low cost setup and some open source technologies, we should be able to develop. So with this motto, once again looking at the some forced situation at 2020, we thought that for the benefit of students, let us once again revise this concept for the application, maybe a IoT application, maybe a electronics or telecommunication application, and maybe a embedded or real-time application. So we are going to explain the whole process involved in implementing a closed loop control system which is real time in nature, and the application is implementing on a cloud platform. There are majorly four contributors for this tutorial. Myself, Dr. Y.S. Rao. I did on system design, Dr. R.R. Saban, who has contributed in mathematical modeling of PID controller. Srijal Pujari, alumni of Sardar Patel Institute of Technology, who has contributed in converting this mathematical model of PID algorithm into a programming model. Prabhat Kumar is our first year student who has contributed or helped us in testing the hardware. Alright, so with this introduction, let us start about what do you mean by real-time virtual lab. This entire session we have created as a tutorial into 6 parts. So some tutorials are we have already developed. Some tutorials is further scope of improvement as far as this platform is concerned. So to begin with, this session is all about real-time system design, and the subsequent tutorials is PID, that is the part 2 is about PID controller mathematical model by Dr. R. R. Sawan. And how do you tune? This itself is a research scope for several years. How do you tune a controller? And you need to verify whether it works or not by using some simulation tools. And then the most challenging issue is we are not talking about just a simulation, we are talking about a real-time system. So how to convert a simulated model into a real-time programming model. So that tutorial is number 4, will be explained by Srijal. Then the 5th part is of the further scope of this is all about communication using internet. So that is about device to device communication or machine to machine communication. So there is a lot of scope in this area, since now this decade is all about IoT applications. So what are the possible ways of using various IoT platforms or the cloud domains where a device can be connected and it can give some business to the industry. And finally, there are some companies or developers who has also provided some user interface, graphical user interface to these virtual labs or real-time systems. So we will see how to develop your own user interface without spending on like softwares like LabVIEW, etc., where you can develop your own user interface. Okay, so before talking about this platform, we need to understand what do you mean by real-time simulation. We are not talking about a simulation which is done on a personal computer. We are talking about a virtual lab which is a real-time system. So a real-time system, a real-time simulation, a real-time emulation is, there is a gap that is which cannot be done on a personal computer. So there are some parameters I have listed down that why a PC simulation is not a real-time simulation. So in short, this is all about the difference between a general purpose system versus a system which is a application specific system, or in short we also called as an embedded system. So point number 1, though once again we are talking about software and hardware, but personal computer or the desktop system is a standard system where the entire hardware and software almost from 1980s till date, the memory mapping, IO mapping architecture is a standard system. So whatever is the simulations we are doing by using C, C++, Java, any of the personal computer compilers or some commercial tools like MATLAB and all, they are executed on a standard system. However, the system which we are talking is not a computer, which is a non-standard system, because the memory mapping and IO mapping is nowhere published, or there is no standard references where one has to design for these embedded systems. So it is a user choice, or it is all about application specific systems. So a designer always has to design the software and hardware as per the application, definitely it is a non-standard system. Second is, when we talk about software and hardware, what are the major components? One is the CPU, second is the operating system, third is the architecture. For years, when it comes to standard system, majorly the industry or the educational sector is using Intel CPU when it comes to desktop system, Microsoft or a Linux operating system, and architecture of a computer is IBM. However, so that means whatever is the simulations we are doing today on computer is on a CPU which is a Intel. That means the object code is always created for a Intel x86 CPUs, and there is a lot of help which is provided by the operating system to the application developers, and that help is coming from the operating system, either Microsoft operating system or a Linux operating system. And when it comes to interface and design, it is all a IBM architecture. So one has to comply the electrical characteristics and the memory mapping and IO mapping of the IBM architecture. So that is the another reason why we always make some assumptions while developing the simulations, because by default we assume that the CPU is Intel, operating system is Microsoft, and the architecture is IBM, which is providing you in the backend lot of resources. In short, you can also say those are the culprits for why a system cannot be a real-time system. I will elaborate more on that. Then the third point is, you might have noticed that other than personal computer, you don't find a hard disk in any of these systems which are the application specific systems. You don't find a hard disk in mobile phone, you don't find a hard disk in washing machines, air conditioners, refrigerators, two-wheelers, four-wheelers, any process control instrumentation. Hard disk is there only in computer. But this is, I would say, a problem, because when you are using a simulations in personal computer, that because of the hard disk, the entire environment is called virtual memory. Virtual memory means it is the memory which is not physical, the memory which is not existing, but then a lot of exchange is happening between the primary and secondary storage devices. So you are consuming a lot of memory, though it is not physical, but still you are accessing the hard disk space, which is a terabytes in capacity. So due to this, once again, the simulations which you are doing is, I would say, in a virtual memory environment. The next point is about operating system. By default, personal computers, you need to have a operating system. However, majority of the application specific systems doesn't have operating system. So due to this, what happens is, as I already mentioned, operating system takes care of the hardware initialization. However, when we are talking about the application specific systems, though if operating system we need to load, even then that operating system has to be developed by the designer. It won't come as a part of the system itself. So that means hardware initialization has to be done by the developer itself. Then about the upgradation. While doing your simulations, you always have a flexibility of expanding your system. If at any point of time, if resources are the constraints, then you can increase your memory, you can increase your hard disk space. Nowadays, you also has a luxury of making your system as a part of the networking, maybe a local area network or a global networking like cloud computing. So you always have a scope of increasing your resources, that is your computational resources. So your simulation never bother about the resources in computers. As already mentioned, hardware initialization is already taken care in your conventional desktop systems. However, in application specific systems, that is the major issue that you have to work on, how to initialize your own hardware. The desktop systems least worried about the power consumption. So when you develop the program, when you do a simulation, how much amount of power the system is consuming, you are least bothered because it is drawing the power from the utility. However, when I'm developing my own experimental setup or real time system, I am worried about my power consumption because these are all low power systems or a battery operated systems. The next point is about the operating speed. So power consumption and the operating speed are correlated, they are directly related. So as my operating speed of the system goes on increasing, the amount of power consumed by their device is also increases. For example, in personal computer, the power supply, that is the SMPS switching mode power supply itself is a 600 watts of power supply. That means your CPU is consuming amperes of current in order to execute your programs. But like for example, the i3, i5, they are though working on 3.3 volts but drawing the amperes of current. So that is another issue. A CPU which is working on 3.7 gigahertz is drawing watts of power, which is may not be possible in the application specific systems. Like in mobile phone, you are operating your mobile phone, uh, entire applications are executed on a lithium ion battery where it is drawing some few milliamperes of current. Then, as I said about the computation, memory, IO, these are the real challenges when it comes to application specific systems because these are all the design constraints. As you all know, if you try to increase or ask for more, the entire system, entire product may fail. So performance is really a challenge in application specific system. We all can understand in computer day by day we are more going for a user friendly systems, more graphics, more APIs, so that developing a code is so easy when it comes to desktop systems. Because of these compilers, day by day they are going more graphical user interface. They are making use of pre-written libraries. However, one need to understand when I make using of these APIs or these libraries, they unnecessarily consume lot of resources. So if I want to create even a multitasking environment, or if I want to write a small scheduling program, that itself will make use of lot of memory resources like stack. The push pop operations, uh, which consumes a lot of memory, if I am trying to implement a multitasking environment in a real time system. So performance will drastically degrade if I go for a scheduling algorithm, which is a burden in a real time system. As I mentioned, as I make use of high level languages in a real time system, I mean, we cannot think of programs which are developed by graphics, but at least even a high level language itself is a oversize. We preferably, if it comes to performance, we prefer to make use of the assembly language program. But however, the assembly language program nowadays nobody uses, because the amount of time it takes for application development is huge. And second is, now it's also important how quickly you develop the program, as time to market is one of the design parameter. So people are preferring the high level languages. So one has to carefully select a compiler which has the provision for selection of the optimization levels of writing the program. However, in doing the simulations in personal computer, we don't need to bother about these problems like the graphics or scheduling, etc. The another performance parameter is about my numbering systems. When I do simulations in MATLAB or some Scilab or C, C++, Java, I have a luxury of using the floating point numbers, double floats, etc. Because the reason I already mentioned, in desktop systems, first of all, they have a inbuilt floating point arithmetic unit. Second, they are using the compiler and the operating system. So it's make use of your virtual memory and other resources to do your simulations. However, in application specific systems, 95% of the CPUs doesn't have floating point unit. So if you define a floating point arithmetic unit in an application specific system, it may support while writing the program, but in the back end, it will convert that floating point number into a fixed point number. So you need to understand a huge amount of code is created just for one floating point number. So it may lead to excessive resources are used. And then about the limits. Please understand that though your computational unit may be make using of the numbering system whatever you want, but when it comes to peripherals always uses the fixed point numbers, not even signed numbers. Say for example, A to D converter, D to A converters, timers, etc. They're all working on fixed point numbers. So when you write the programs, when you write your algorithms, when you write your simulation programs, they may be you make using of whatever is the numbering system you may want. But finally, when it comes to controlling application, right? If you want to control your system, but that system always accepts the numbers which are on fixed point, and that too with the limits, right? There is a upper limit and lower limit, including your uh, uh, these sensors. They also has a limits of operating. So when we will see more about that when it comes to PID algorithm, how to implement a PID algorithm in a hardware. These are the real challenges, that how to convert a simulated program in a computer into a program which runs on an application specific system, because there is no scope of a simulated program, because a program in a computer is always a program, it never be a product. So if at all if you want to make a product, then one has to convert the simulated program into a emulated program. So in short, I mean, you have to put lot of efforts in converting your simulated programs into a real time programs. So that is why this entire video or this entire tutorial is all about how to convert a simulated programs into a real time program. So we are mainly emphasizing on this point. And then finally, the compilers as it is doesn't work. We all know by default when we use any C, C++, Java, VB, .NET, all these compilers, by default their standard input output devices are same last 40 years. Say for example, in a desktop system, your input is always a ASCII keyboard and your monitor is always a uh, uh, video controller which supports text mode as well as graphics mode. So by default your input and output is same. So similarly several your peripherals are same for last 30-40 years. However, when it comes to application specific system, your standard input outputs are always different. They are based on the application. Say for example, in this tutorial, our standard input output is not any monitor or any keyboard, because without any human intervention, we would like to communicate to the device and control the device. That means even a display, even a keyboard won't be there. So in this application, our standard input output is a serial port. That means my input is a serial port, my output is a serial port. It may be a wired communication, it may be a wireless communication, but finally STDIO in my system is a serial port. So like that, based on the application, every application has their own input output devices. So because of that, compilers which we use in computer for simulations doesn't work as is in my application specific systems, because the system is designed, the user interface is designed as per the application. So you have to once again rework on my input output devices. We all can understand, when it comes to computer, very rarely we talk about size, weight, cost, all these things. Is by default they are general purpose systems. But when it comes to application specific systems, there are good number of products which are miserably failed because of their size, weight, cost, or they are unable to release that product quickly in the market. Like we always seen in a mobile phone, say for example, people look for the size, people look for the weight, and also how quickly you have released a with the new features in the market. So they matter a lot. Similarly, when it comes to some of the product, cost is an issue. Say for example, set top box. So if I have a set top box which is slightly low cost, so people will quickly go for that particular model. So one has to worry about these design metrics. And lastly, about selection of the software and hardware is a design issue when it comes to application specific system. When it comes to computer, it is not an issue, because finally your hardware is fixed, your software, that is your compilers, your operating system is fixed. So there is no choice when it comes to computer. However, when it comes to application specific systems, that is real time systems, it is a choice. So now one need to understand that when I am writing a simulation program in a personal computer, I already listed several points that these are all not the issues in computer. So due to that, my program, whatever is the program I am simulating, I am making lot of assumptions, and most importantly, the resources which I am consuming for simulating the programs are not the constraints. However, when I am talking about a system which is a product, which is a hardware in real time, where the resources are the biggest constraints. So due to that, the simulated programs as it is, it doesn't work in a real in a application specific system. So with these objectives, the purpose of developing this platform is all about, though it is virtual lab has several ways of defining virtual lab. People also say that a computer remotely accessed is also a virtual lab. A program simulated remotely is also a virtual lab. But in this context, the virtual lab means a lab which is, though it is a virtual, however, it has to be a real-time system. And since we are in the era of every device is connected to the internet and it is affordable now, so in this platform, one of the major objective is we would like to make use of this low cost APIs or service providers to connect our system to the internet. And second thing is, without spending much money on the hardware and compilers, we would like to make use of these open source compilers and the service providers in order to develop the hardware and software. And then, since the purpose of this platform is for students, for educational purpose, so if a student wants to make use of this experimental setup remotely, where the candidate should be able to use this setup without using digital storage oscilloscope, power supplies, function generators and data acquisition system, where this hardware setup itself should provide these features. That means these features we should be able to implement through program in a hardware. So replacing our standard test and measuring equipment by using this platform is the major objective of developing this platform. Though we are demonstrating this for a closed loop control system, however, this can be further extended. We can also develop for other domains like embedded systems, IoT, digital power electronics. We already developed 3 platforms for digital power electronics for a larger system. This system we have demonstrating for a low power application, maybe 10 to 15 watts of power we will be controlling. However, in the laboratory we also developed a system which is up to 5 kilowatts of power. We are able to do that. But then we want to connect these systems on an internet. That is the scope of, why we are explaining this platform. Then digital signal processing, image processing, digital electronics for first year and second year students, how to perform remotely, wireless sensor network like GSM, GPS or various modems, how one can connect it to the IoT application and then perform various practicals, and similarly the mobile communication. So in short, any electronics or telecommunication system can be connected to the internet and remotely accessible by using this concept called real-time virtual lab. So in this era of Internet of Things, first let me define, before we talk about this platform, that why IoT. For years, communication is wired communication. We have used various communication protocols by through wired like RS-232. Almost 40 years are over, we are still using RS-232. Otherwise, there are various serial communication protocols, whether they are synchronous or asynchronous. And then, because of this popularity of 2G, 3G, now 4G, wireless communication has become very, very popular. Whether it is a long distance communication or a short distance communication, now communication means now by default is a wireless communication. But now it is further extended that this communication should not be limited to local. It should be remotely controlled. That means the distance is globally connected. So now the definition has changed. For a communicating to a device is not limited by distance. A dynamically global network infrastructure with self-configuring capabilities based on standard and interoperable communication protocols. That means now my device should be connected to a global network and it should be accessible globally, and most importantly self-configurable. That means the device, it should configure on its own, and then it should make use of the standard protocols, which is a standard in the sense globally acceptable protocols, because some of the protocols are limited to some of the applications, but when it comes to global, then I should make use of a protocol which is widely acceptable by all the countries. And interoperable means, see, as I already mentioned, communication, there are a number of communication standards are there, protocols are there. But when I want to make use of my device globally accessible, then one communication protocol should convert into another communication protocol. So that means seamless integration. That means user should not feel, for example, if I have a local device which is make using of a Bluetooth which has a limited range of 10 meters, then that device how to connect it to a global network. So how I convert my Bluetooth communication into a global network like a internet protocol. So that is the meaning of how to make a system a global, and how to make a system which is interoperable communication. And since we are talking about the system is about virtual, that means it may be physical, it may not be physical. And things means we are not at all talking about computer, because computer communication, computer networks is once again a 30 years old subject. But today we are talking about networking of devices. Means device means it is not computer. Things, internet of things means it is internet of not computer, internet of things means devices. So we are talking about a device which has its own identity and physical attributes and virtual personalities. That means the device should have its own uniqueness. Say, for example, today every computer has its own uniqueness because it comes with an Ethernet card. So it has its own MAC address. Due to that, the moment if you connect it to the internet, every computer can be recognizable remotely because it has its own unique address. Similarly, every Bluetooth device has its own unique IP address. So in the same form, if I want to make my device to be globally accessible, then the device also should have its own IP address. So that is all about the a device should have its identity and seamless integration into the information network. So finally, the last tutorial this virtual lab is how do I integrate my lab into a global platform. That means if I have a cloud platform or a platform which is some part of the world, how do I integrate my data or my system into a information network which is not developed, not local, it is global, and associated environments and the users. So in short, this is all about IoT. Though I said a definition, but any device, the moment if you want to make it global, so you need to understand the what are the issues involved in making a system which is globally accessible. So what are the challenges? While designing my IoT application, how do I design? What are my issues? So as I mentioned already, things in IoT means it is about the devices which have unique identities and can perform remote sensing. So when I'm explaining about this platform, so this platform has to be remote sensing, actuating and monitoring. So that means now it is first is it is sensing. That means I should be able to sense some parameters. The parameters are physical. Please understand, the parameters are not just a numbers. In simulation environment in a computer, my parameters are always a numbering system. But however, in a real-time system, these parameters are coming from the real environment by make using of the sensors. So my design challenge is here, I should be able to measure my real parameters by make using of some sensors. And then actuating means how do I convert my numbering system into an electrical signal. Say for example, if I want to switch on a bulb or switch on a motor or switch on some fan and so on. So I mean these, how do I convert my numbers into a electrical signal, and that electrical signal will energize some coil which will convert the current into an electromagnetic field, and some motion takes place. So this is all about converting of energy from one form to other form. So that is the actuating. And then third is about the monitoring. So when a system which is not physically present in front of you and it is at a remote location, the worrisome is that how do you monitor that? How do you grab the data? How do you make sure that the system is working without any failures? Because in a larger application, this system is also used, as already mentioned, by multinational companies for remote monitoring of their factories, like power stations are remotely monitored. And the other application domain is the healthcare sector, right? In a healthcare sector, even there are some companies who have demonstrated the capabilities of remotely performing a surgical, that is operation of a patient by a doctor which is operating that patient from some other part of the world. So when you are doing this, so naturally a platform should have sensing, a platform should have actuating, and a platform should have a monitoring capabilities. So these three things along with the unique identity we will be demonstrating in this platform. So you need to have at least these four features, then only you can say the platform is a real-time IoT virtual system. And then what are we doing? This system exchange the data with other connected devices. Say for example, as I said, the purpose of this platform is for the students. That means if a group of 20 students wants to access this hardware, how do they access this hardware? How do they exchange the data? How do they exchange the program? Please understand the difference between program and data. A data which is a processed variable in a hardware. However, a program is a guiding instruction to a device. So how do you program a device and how do you grab the data itself is a challenge when it comes to real-time system. Then collected data from other devices and process the data locally or send the data to a centralized servers or cloud-based application. So I already mentioned that since we are talking about a IoT application, not only locally processing within the device, we also want to put this data on a centralized server or a cloud platform and then perform some tasks locally. As I mentioned that it's not only acquiring the data, we also would like to control some systems by using some actuators. So in short, these are some important parameters one has to consider while designing a IoT platform. Okay, so when it comes to IoT, people think that IoT is all about protocols. However, there's no doubt about IoT is all about protocols, but then you need to understand this is one part of the IoT. IoT protocols, in short, it is about computation, communication, and sensing. So these are three parts of any IoT. First, you have to sense, that is physical parameters, because when I say protocols, we have a understanding that whatever we study in OSI layers in computer networks is about the protocols. But when I am saying IoT, IoT is not only just a protocols, it is also about sensing, then computation. Because in when you studied about computer networks, your computation is happening in a computer. However, here it is happening on a device. So second important thing is the computation. Then third is about the communication. When it comes to computer, we all know that it is a standard communication. But however, now if you look at the IoT, that's the reason why once again OSI talks about various layers of protocols. But in IoT, we have focused only four layers. That is, the bottom is the link layer and the topmost is the application layer. As you can understand that in link layer, as you can see, it is about the physical medium, that how do you interface to the network, right? So it could be a Ethernet, it could be a Wi-Fi, it could be a WiMAX, or it could be 2G, 3G, LTE, and cellular networks. So since my physical media could be anything, now that is a application which decides that which protocol I make use when I connect my application into the network. And the topmost is the application layer. So this is all about the messaging, right? How do I communicate? How a communication takes place between the client and server. So when I develop a application, my application make use of what kind of communication, right? So it's a basically a choice based on the application. So we will see the last final tutorial is all about which protocol we make use of while developing a application, what are the issues while selecting the protocol in the application layer when it comes to a specific application. It is all about the types of communication. So we are not focusing on these protocols because this is all about, first is about the real-time virtual lab, but definitely the last session talks about the application layer. We also can understand that in the network layer, I already mentioned about every device has its own unique identity, but then since day by day the number of devices are becoming millions and billions, so naturally having a unique address for a specific device itself is a challenge. IPv4 already exhausted, its addressing capacity is already exhausted. So people are talking about increasing the addressing capacity in a network layer. So IPv6 is in place, but however, we need to understand when you have a address for a device, and if you keep on increasing the address range, that itself is a overhead. So since we are not talking about computer, we are talking about a device communication, and in every packet of information, if my address field itself is a huge in size, that means my most of the communication, that is 20 to 30% of the communication, is just only addressing that packet. That means 30% of my efficiency will come down as my address field, my checksum is keep on increasing. So this is another issue in the network layer. What kind of addressing mechanism one should make use of it? So let us we will discuss about these issues maybe in some other tutorial, but this tutorial is all about a communication. All right, so communication are basically four types. A communication is a communication based on a request and response, just a like a open loop, or a communication could be a closed loop communication where there is a feedback is always there, that whether the communication link is established or not. What happens is, there are applications where I am least bothered whether my client has received the data or not. I am keep on publishing the data. However, there are some applications where I want to confirm whether my client has correctly received the data or not. So I want to have a feedback. So based on the application, one have a freedom of choosing your own messaging protocols. So as I already mentioned, in application layer, we have a choice of choosing various communication protocols, like in synchronous communication, where the request response like HTTP is a client always send a request to the server, and in request to the client, the server will grab the data from the resource and give a response. However, in asynchronous, there is always an acknowledgement based on the request, then there will be a response. So the HTTP is a open type where it is a request and response type. However, in a CoAP, we have an acknowledgement with, for a request from the client. The third protocol, where first it establish a link between the client and server. So this is like a full duplex, where first I'm sending a request to the server, and then a link is established, and then message exchange takes place in a streamed manner. So XMPP protocol make use of a full duplex communication, where a link is established first and a data exchange takes place, and then once again, once the uh, purpose is done, then a communication, a command will be sent to the server saying that connection is disconnected. So in short, when it comes to virtual lab, we are looking for a protocol, application layer protocol, which is a full duplex in nature, and in a streamed manner we'd like to communicate between the client and server. So the third is more relevant when it comes to virtual lab, real-time virtual lab. Fourth is like we have seen some of the applications like the YouTube, etc., where people are using on a subscription or notification model, like MQTT, AMQP, CoAP. They supports this what is called a subscription, that is a publisher and subscription model, where a client always subscribe to the broker, and then whenever there is a application which publish the data, and the client, that is subscribed client, will receive the data in for that by make using of these APIs. So anyhow, we, our focus is on a full duplex communication between the client and server, which is what we are focusing. So in short, this is what we called as a exclusive pair communication model. So as I already mentioned, this is a bidirectional communication, full duplex communication, where as you can see, a server a client will send a request to the server. We will talk more about this in the subsequent slides, and then server will accept the request, and then a messaging takes place between the client and server, which is a bidirectional communication. And once again, a client will terminate the service, and then in response to that, server will terminate the connection. So we are looking for a exclusive pair communication when it comes to real-time virtual lab. Okay, what do you mean by real time, and how real time is different from non-real time system? Real time means it's not real fast. It is not about how much amount of time it is taking for computation. It is all about natural time. Natural time means reliably on time. It is not before, it is not after, it is all about in time. In time means, say for example, in digital signal processing, we always talk about the sampling. So if I say at n is, I have taken a sample, and my next sample comes at n plus 1. So between n and n plus 1, I am supposed to execute my program. I am supposed to process that variable. So some computation takes place. But if I am, my algorithm unable to compute that variable before n plus 1, then that is called non-real time system. That means if I miss a sample, that means anything can happen. Say for example, in power electronics, in an inverter, if I miss a sample, it is as good as shorting a transistor, short circuiting a battery, short circuiting a motor, short circuiting a power station. So it may be a huge damage to a factory. So missing a sample is like a guided missiles, bullet trains, nuclear power reactors, is a catastrophic. So real time is all about reliably on time. It is not before, it is not after, it is in time. So you also should have some what is called waiting time. Now you should not occupy this entire space, that is the delta t, between n and n plus 1 for your processing, because your algorithm also make use of some stack. So pushing and popping operations takes place, context switching takes place. So that is why you should, your task should be less than n plus 1, that is less than the delta t, then only a real time processing takes place. However, I already mentioned that why a simulated program in personal computer is non real time, because in computer, whether you use a Windows operating system or a Linux operating system, the scheduling algorithm, that is the kernel, is not written by you. So naturally, the operating system has its own priorities while executing various programs, various applications. So we don't know how much amount of time it gives for running a application. So naturally what happens is, you always seen that your program, when it executes, it takes different times for on different days. So a program always gives the same result. So we are not differing as far as the results are concerned. Results will be same, but however, it may process your entire application maybe before time or maybe after the time, definitely not in time. So this is all about that real timeness. So in computer it never be real time, because the scheduler is not scheduling your task application based on the deadlines. So that is the reason why computer simulations are always a non-real time systems. We are in the subsequent slides, we also will discuss about how to make a computer real time system, but otherwise by default computer program or simulated programs in computers always a non real time systems.